Good morning and welcome. Nice to have you along with me today. I'm in a few miles north of Chelsea, Michigan in the Waterloo recreation area, and I'm going to do some forest bathing today. Yeah, that's a new term that's being used a lot nowadays, and what it really means is I'm going for a hike in the woods. Forest bathing. Anyway, this is the Waterloo-Pinckney Trail. We're going to hike from the Green Lake area to the Mill Lake area, maybe 3-4 miles one way, and we're going to have some lunch. Brought my stove and some ramen noodles along. We're going to cook a little lunch and see what we can see along the trail. So if you'd like to, get your hiking shoes on, grab your walking stick and some trail snacks and come along with me. So as the name implies, the Waterloo-Pinckney Trail runs from the Waterloo recreation area to the Pinkney recreation area. I think it's a total length of about 36 miles, and it's one of the few hiking and backpacking trails in the lower half of Michigan. I've only been on sections of it before, mostly in the Pinkney recreation area, where some of the sections are open to mountain biking. And I've ridden my mountain bike there, but I've never hiked the trail. So I'm about to experience that today. You can see the trail here. It's a well-trod trail. This section that you have parking access at Green Lake campground, this section here appears to be quite popular with day hikers. Nice, wide, smooth, sandy trail surface. Coming out into a little meadow area here. Well, starting out this morning, it was kind of cool and cloudy and gray. The forecast for later in the day was for rain and thunderstorms. But right now, it's a little break in the clouds overhead. And it's kind of sunny along this little patch of the trail. Nice and warm. Walking through this meadow here, listening to the birds singing around us. What could be better? The Waterloo-Pinckney hiking trail runs from the Waterloo recreation area just outside of Jackson. It starts there at the Portage Lake campground, and it runs eastward, northeastward into the Pinkney recreation area, and ends up there at I think it's pretty close to the Crooked Lake campground area about 36 miles total length. Very interesting topography. It passes through glacial area, glacially sculpted area. Interlobate area it's called. It's between two lobes of the ice sheets that covered Michigan 15,000 years ago, and where these two lobes intersected, the glaciers dumped all the load of gravel and rock and sand that they were carrying and created this amazing network of kettle ponds, kettle lakes, marshes, swamps, high glacial ridges, moraines, cames, eskers. The Waterloo-Pinckney Trail runs right through the middle of all that. So you get to experience all those different landscapes along the trail. I must be walking pretty fast. I've already come to a road crossing here, Cassidy Road. Cassidy Road is a wild natural beauty road. It passes through the Waterloo Recreation Area. Wetlands. Forests, hills. You can see it's barely 2 lanes wide, and it is a beautiful road. So remote and isolated feeling. Here we go. Back into the woods. Here's one of the glacial features. Little kettle pond down here. As the glaciers retreated, they left behind large blocks of ice stranded, and these blocks of ice melted. And when they were all melted, they left behind these depressions in the gravel and sand outwash. And the depression filled with water and leave us with what we have today in the woods all over southeast Michigan, these little ponds. Little frog ponds. And you can usually recognize a kettle lake, kettle pond by the steep sides around it. The steep sides were the ice contact points. These blocks of ice, they were usually submerged all the way around in the gravel and sand and left the steep sides all around them when they melted away. Well, we've just come up a little incline here. We're at the top right now, and we're about to go down the other side. And you can see the trail here, how rocky it is. And this little ridge is part of the leftover remains from the glaciers. You can see the rocks all worn and weathered and rounded, tumbled as they made their way down off of the ice and were washed away in streams, deposited. Here's somebody who has not been practicing their leave no trace principles. Piece of litter here on the trail. Pick it up and take it out with us. Well, here's something everyone needs to avoid when they're out in the woods. I've been watching for it as I hiked along here. This is the first poison ivy patch I've come across. Leaves of 3, let it be. Here's another dead giveaway for poison ivy. The creeping vines that go up a tree. See how hairy that is? That's a real tell for poison ivy. Notice over here these other vines going up the tree with 5-leaf clusters. That, I believe, is Virginia creeper, not poison ivy. Don't need to worry about that. Forest bathing. We are in the forest. Just remember to bring your soap and rubber ducky. Alright, don't get grossed out. Here's some scat along the trail. Look at that big old slug going on there. Now don't get this confused with dog poop. This looks to be coyote scat, and you can tell because it's got fur in it, hair, that comes from the animals, the little rodents and stuff they eat. Coyotes like to poop along trails as a way of marking their territory for any other animal that would pass by here. Well, we've been traveling through an area, a lot of ups and downs here, up and over the ridges left from the glaciers, gravel and sand ridges. We got quite a steep climb right here. This is probably the biggest climb yet. Put her in low gear, baby steps. Nice and easy. More to go yet. Huffing and puffing. Blue blaze trail marker on this tree here, marked with the number 21. It's the first one I've seen with numbers on it. I reckon that might mean we're 21 miles from the beginning of the trail. We've been climbing for the last 5 minutes. Quite a climb, an extended climb. Looks like we're at the summit right here. Top of a glacial ridge. I don't know, I'm hard with estimating distances and whatnot. We probably just climbed 80 or 100 feet vertical. You can hear me breathing hard. Well, the mosquitoes haven't been too bad yet. As long as I keep moving, they're not a problem, but every time I stop, I get a couple on me. I didn't put any DEET on yet. Maybe next stop I'll get out my DEET and put some on my neck and arms and stuff. It's not really very easy to read, but the markings on that tree say prison zone. There is a correctional facility pretty close to where we are now. Cassidy Lake. It's like a boot camp. You can drive past there and you see all the inmates outside lined up doing exercises and stuff. It's like a boot camp for first offenders, scared straight kind of stuff, you know. So we better keep our eyes open. You guys look right, I'll look left. Make sure there's no prisoners trying to escape. We've come down out of the glacial ridges and valleys, and we're now down in kind of a flat spot, flatter area through the forest. Trail kind of wends and winds its way through here. Here's some more Coyote Scat. Yeah, and there's tons of it right here. Poopy. Making really good time here, already to the Waterloo Road crossing. Now remember, look both ways before crossing. Well, according to the map, we may be just a little bit past halfway to where I'd planned to head today, the Gerald Eddy Discovery Center by Mill Lake. Making pretty good progress, but I have to remember, for every mile you might hike in, you got to hike out too. So I may stop short of there. It depends on how I feel, the energy levels are like, what the weather's like. But for now we're good. We got snacks, got water. Keep moving. Here's a real nice white oak tree. Can you tell why it's called a white oak? The bark on the white oak is gray and scaly. It almost looks white in the forest. Red oaks will have a smoother bark on the trunk. Here's one right here. Much smoother. And it will furrow out like this as it matures. Yeah, we're up on the ridge here. Actually, the ice contact slope, a little pothole kettle lake down there that's matured and filled in. It's almost like a marsh or a swamp now. I don't know how well that shows up on the camera. With this wide angle lens, you can see the far shore of it, the bank on the other side there. And then sweep around the other side of the trail here, and there's another nice one down in there. So we're kind of on a ridge separating two little kettle lakes. Hope you don't mind the little geology lesson today. Geology's it's been a lifelong interest of mine, and I especially enjoyed studying and learning about the glacial geology of Michigan, all the landforms that it left behind. And I try to imagine the time 15,000 years ago when there was a mile or more of ice over our heads where we're standing right now, and what that landscape must have been like after the glaciers left. It's fascinating. We're walking along this ridge right now, and we are on a high, kind of a high ridge between two kettles. And I'm wondering if this isn't an esker. Eskers were formed underneath the glaciers. When the meltwaters exited the glacier, they melted streams in the bottom face of the glacier against the earth, and the water ran out through those streams, and as it did, it hollowed a tunnel beneath the glacier and deposited sand and gravel and boulders there. And then as the glaciers receded and melted away, all that was left behind was this pile of sand and gravel. So if you look at them on a topographic map, they look like ridges, sort of like a snake running along the ground. Curvy and bendy, steep sides, narrow tops. Could be we're on one, I'm not sure. Well, there's the descent. We just came down off that ridge. I'm not really sure if that was an esker or not. Could have been. This could be the end of it here where the water flowed out from underneath. Who knows? Anyway. If the water were higher, was a little earlier in the spring, there'd probably be water running through this little swale right here. Connects the two kettle lakes. Here's another pretty cool white oak. White oaks get these thick, massive trunks, and then they get these gnarly looking protrusions on them wherever a branch is broken off. Humps and bumps and protrusions, and a lot of times if you let your imagination run wild, you can imagine faces, creatures and goblins. That one kind of looks like something, I don't know. It's got a snout and a couple bulgy eyes. Well, I've been rambling on quite a bit here. Sorry, probably gets pretty boring. Anyway, I'm gonna turn the camera off, shut up and walk for a while. How's that? Oh, there's some kind of creepy old abandoned house trailers over there in the woods. Looks kind of sketchy to me. Oh, it looks like it had a blowout. At least my lace come untied. Time for emergency roadside service. Good as new. Made our destination, the Gerald Discovery Center. It's a little ways up this trail here yet, but that's our destination for the day. Take a little rest break there, fix some soup for lunch, and maybe go inside, have a look in the center. I don't know. I made it this far. I did pretty good. Just my cocoa wheats and muffin for breakfast and some M&Ms on the trail, but it's time right now for lunch. Look at this pretty little meadow, small meadow area here with these lupines. Lupines? I don't know how you say it. Very beautiful. Bumblebees buzzing all over them. So I was planning to take my lunch up here into one of these shelters, but it looks like we got a bunch of noisy and rowdy scouts up here, all full of energy. Well, I waited a few minutes and that group of noisy scouts packed it up and headed back for the trail, so I have the shelter here all to myself now to cook my soup and have some lunch. So this is my little alcohol stove made from a Coke can and a little pot rest that I made from some coat hanger wires. Gonna get all set up here, boil some water and make some soup. Put this much alcohol, ounce and a half. Pour it in the stove. Have it setting in a lid here from a pickle jar or something, kind of a base for the stove, and I'll put a little bit of alcohol in there. And then light that alcohol. And what that does, that's a primer for the stove. It heats the alcohol that's inside the stove and vaporizes it. And when it vaporizes, it rises to these little holes around the circumference here. And flames will come out of there. Alright, alcohol flames are almost invisible, but I can assure you that's lit right now. So I'm going to get my pot on top of the stand and get a heat shield. I carry this aluminum foil with me and I make a little heat shield around the pot. That is hot. You can see how strongly that alcohol flame burns there underneath. That takes no time at all to boil that pot of water. It's kind of nice. A long time ago when I was out one day, I took noodles and made a pot just like this, and I spilled a little bit of the broth on the, it boiled over, and it got on the foil and on my little lid in there, and it still has a little bit of the residue in there. So every time I start this up, that little bit of residue heats up and warms up, and it smells like food even before the water's done boiling. There's only water in there boiling now, but it already smelling like food. It's making me hungry like crazy. Wow, can you see that? A little bit of steam coming out of that pot already? This water is, oh, I can hear it. It's boiling. Time to put the noodles in. And that wasn't too smart. I got my flavoring packet in there. Oh, geez. Preheated. That smells real good already. Well, those noodles look like they're getting pretty done. I'm just going to take this thing off the heat and let it steep for a while. Alright, so here's our ramen noodle lunch all ready to go. Steaming pretty good still. I'll have to be real careful with this. Good like only ramen noodles can be. So here's my little high caloric content fuel for the hike back. Get me started out anyway. Cherry pie. One bite. I finished my lunch and got a 4 mile walk back to the car. I'm not gonna shoot much video on the way back because we already saw all the stuff coming in, unless we come across something interesting walking the other way. Right now we're at the Gerald Discovery Center, little interpretive trail they have here. And they have some interesting displays around here. If you're a geology nut or a rock hound, they have some really interesting displays, and I'm going to shoot a little of that before I leave. If you ever wonder about what all the rocks are, some people look at rocks and they're just rocks, but every rock tells a story. And they have some really good, interesting displays here. All the rocks identified, what they are, where they're from, what the minerals are in them. It's very fascinating. This is a display of igneous rocks. Very interesting stone there. Sparkles. Sparkles in the sun. Here's another display, metamorphic rocks. All the different types. Look at the banding in that one. That one is called Banded Iron Formation. There's another sparkly one, looks like the other one. That's hematite, kind of iron ore. This one is called jaspilite. I love these. Banded gneiss. Beautiful. Some more interesting rocks, but this one here really, This is outstanding. Perfectly round, layered. That is a concretion, sandstone concretion. Here's another cool one. You find these all over southeast Michigan. These rocks, people have them in their yard. They decorate alongside their driveways with them. This is basalt with granite dikes running through it. The basalt is softer, so it wears away and leaves the granite veins exposed, standing up. So enough already. I'm sure you're sick of the geology and rambling already, so this is the way out. Same way we came in. 4 miles to go. One step at a time. I'm not sure. I think these are wild strawberry plants. The leaf sure looks like a strawberry, and the flower does too. Reminds me of strawberry flowers. We used to grow strawberries in our garden when I was a kid. There's a little sassafras tree too. You dig that up and collect the roots from it, and you can make sassafras tea. Supposed to be good for circulation. Opens your blood vessels. Bush Light on Bush Road. Well, here we are back to Cassidy Road again. So, got a short mile to go back to the truck. Almost done. Be lying if I said I wasn't hurting right now. My calves are cramping up. My hips are hurting. Bottom of my feet are hurting. Should have brought some ibuprofen along. Took a couple preemptively back there at the lunch break. I think that would have been helpful. Last mile. Don't worry, be happy. You can see how grim and gray the sky's gotten here in the last half hour or so. Looks like rain is imminent. And the truck's only about a quarter mile down that path. So we're almost back. So I want to thank you for coming along with me today on our little forest bath. Hike. I hope you got nice and clean. I did. And I can't wait for that nice dry towel back in the truck. So until next time, happy hiking. Boy, it's dark like twilight back in these woods right now. The breeze has stopped, the woods are silent. Starting to hear some low rumbles of thunder too. We timed this just right. Probably get a nice shower driving home. A shower after our forest bath. Oh, yep, I just felt the first drop of rain too. Hear it?